I'm really pleased that you are here today to answer all my questions. And I'm going to kick off with a really easy one that I don't really know the answer to, which is where are you from and where do you live now?
Do you want to start, Parul?
No, I think you should start.
Okay, so I'm from Cleveland, Ohio, where I spent the first 18 years of life. And then I live in London now, and I've been here for about 6 years. And in between there, I've lived in Atlanta and Chicago and different places and was a vagabond for a bit, but that's my story.
I was born in New Zealand, in Wellington, but I am a Londoner and I've been a Londoner for many, many years. And I live not very far from Matt now in Southwest London.
And so how did you two meet, which isn't on my list, but I'm going to ask how you two met.
I met him at Escape to the Woods. So Escape the City, which is a fantastic organization. I discovered them years ago, and I went to Escape to the Woods because I'd left publishing temporarily, and I knew that I wanted to get back in, but I didn't know how. And so I thought I'd go on a weekend camping trip where we just discussed careers and futures, and Matt was facilitating.
Wow, that sounds amazing. I've never heard of that.
And that's what brought me to London. Is I came to help. I became friends with the guys who started Escape the City back in when I was in Chicago. I'd kind of been internet pen pals with them, and then I met them, and then I came over in 2014 to London to help them launch a school for people who wanted to leave their corporate jobs and do something else. And so, one of the events we ran in the first year I was there was called Escape to the Woods, and that's where Parul and I first met.
Fascinating.
So that was 7 years ago, almost 6.5 years ago.
Yeah, and we stayed in touch, and we had at some point years down the line, I was a freelance editor, and I was talking to Matt about ideas, and we both started to think. We both knew that there was something we wanted to create, but we didn't know what it would look like, and that was the start of our discussion about what eventually became the London Writers Salon.
That's really cool. So what did you actually both study then, and what was kind of your first jobs? Were you as a writing always kind of been part of your life?
For me, no. So I studied philosophy at university, and originally I wanted to be Andrew Lloyd Webber. I wanted to write musicals, but I don't think I was good enough, and I ended up going into management consultancy. Being in publishing was not even a career option. Like Indian parents never would have encouraged that because the pay's so terrible. So I decided to become a management consultant at first because I didn't know what else to do, and it offered good money, and I got offered a job before I graduated. So I did that for a long time, and then for around 5 years. And then a friend of mine worked in publishing, and I was about to go travel the world. Instead, I decided to take an internship across I think I worked at 5 publishers, and ended up becoming an editorial assistant at Quercus, which is now part of Hachette. And that's how I ended up going into publishing. And so I became an editor.
Wow, that's really cool. Such a cool, I'm the same. I didn't start off where I kind of ended up. And it's funny how even with the best will in the world, you don't necessarily, you don't know, do you, when you're picking those early education choices necessarily where you're going to perhaps end up. But that's kind of a good thing these days, I think. You can change careers when you want. And what about you, Matt?
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty similar story, except I never really got into publishing. I'm always kind of been an outsider. So I was good at math and science, so I studied engineering at university. And so I was an industrial and systems engineer, and some of my first jobs while I was still studying was at like a concrete manufacturing plant. So I was doing like process improvements on the manufacturing line. And my first job out of uni was at IBM doing IT and management consulting. So not too dissimilar from Parul, and I equally disliked it. So I got into writing when I wanted to leave IBM. This was 2012, and I decided I was going to quit, but instead then I asked for a sabbatical. And so I got a 7-month sabbatical from IBM. And during that time, I didn't know what I wanted to do next. I didn't know if I wasn't going to work at IBM, what I would do. And so I just traveled for a bit, just as I kind of figured my way. And And that's when I met writing, which I started a blog called Give, Live, Explore, just to document my travels. And what I thought I wanted to be a travel blogger, and then pretty quickly I realized I didn't want to, but I was loving the writing, and more so what it gave to me. So I kind of came into writing definitely later. And that what sparked my interest in publishing and blogging and writing, and in particular, just how publishing was changing and how places like Amazon and others were making it easier for people to self-publish. And so that was kind of my entry into publishing, was through a self-published book that I partnered with a friend on. But that was the spark. And I guess I've been interested in words and writing and helping people get their words out there since then.
What was the book? What was it on?
It's called Tales of Iceland. And we actually interviewed my friend Steve, who wrote it. It's kind of it's a memoir, little travelogue of our travels through Iceland.
Oh, and it still sells.
It still sells, yeah. It's definitely, people love it or hate it. It's kind of it's a little raunchy. But Steve's.
It's got a buck naked dude on the front cover as well, running into the distance. I don't think it's Matt.
It's not me.
Wow, who knew? Iceland was so fun. I should be going there.
Yeah.
So was this around the time when you two kind of met then? The time of the book Naked guy on the cover. This is the kind of time you were getting together and starting to think about London Writers Salon. Is this
actually, it wouldn't be for like 6 years later.
Oh.
Yeah, so that was 2013 that I got involved with the book. 2014, I came to London. I kind of left behind the self-publishing stuff when I came to escape the city. And then that's when I started focusing on facilitation and career change and entrepreneurship and building community. And that's when Parul and I met. But it wasn't until 2020, at the end of 2018, I guess, right, Parul, that we kind of were exchanging. We had some coffees and we said, what if? I'm meeting people at Escape the City who have writing ambitions. I had writing ambitions myself. What if we created something like Escape, but for those people? And then your perspective was, well, actually, I'm having so many interesting conversations with my friends in publishing. We want to make this more accessible to people. And kind of those two ideas coming together.
Yeah, exactly. Before that, I'd thought about, I wanted to create my own publishing company or a literary agency. I'd thought about that because I wanted to somehow put together what I love doing, which is editing and working with words, but also the entrepreneurial side of things. And then I remember Matt and I had coffee, particularly at Bermondsey Work Life, and we were talking about this idea, but we hadn't quite nailed it. And then Matt messaged the library on St. Martin's Lane with a pitch for an idea of what this might look like. And then it was like we had 2 or 3 months to prep for it, and we just hashed it out. And a lot of like our approach was very, like, our philosophy was very much what it is right now, which is we don't want to be pretentious. We want to ask the questions that writers don't get to ask. We want to talk about money. We want to help everyone feel like they can be a part of the writing industry, whatever medium it might be. We want to make people feel inspired by the people that we interview. So it started off as an interview series. So our first one was in January 2019, and it was just we just bought everyone a drink at the end of more people showed up than we thought, and we just bought everyone a drink at the bar. Mm-hmm. And I remember afterwards we were like, oh, it wasn't just 2 people showing up, it was 30 or whatever it was, 35.
Yeah, I think it was about 35.
Wow. It's like, who knew? Okay, this is good, this is fun. And we literally just messaged both Matt and I went through like our contact list, and I just emailed everyone I knew and said, if you know anyone who's interested in writing, come to this session. It's going to be make 2019 the year of writing.
That's fantastic. I think that anybody who works in events will know how hard it is to get 30 people anywhere. Like, it's always such a hard thing to make sure you've got the people there and to have that feeling where everyone's together. And I think, especially with writing, I think it can come across, can't it, sometimes as a closed world that you just can't, like, you have to be really, really knowledgeable, and, you know, you have to be really out there to get involved with. So I love the idea that it's kind of, it does feel like a bit like a warm hug coming to you guys. Like, you really are good. Like, I love the 5-minute intro at the beginning. Like, it's perfect, isn't it? It's always like perfectly pitched. Like, to draw people in. But it's amazing that you started so like in a physical way, then, that you were actually people in a room, like humans together, not like locked down now. So how long were you kind of doing that format before this whole thing happened? And were you kind of planning to do online, or was it more like you really wanted to do that in-person thing for a while?
Yeah, so it was basically everything changed with COVID in March, almost a year ago. So we were doing monthly events, interviews. We had started doing masterclasses in person. We had thought about digital and online, like many people had. It was kind of this like idea, one day we'll build this, and then all of a sudden we were forced to do it. And so it was March. That's when it's like Writers Salon 1.0 was January 2019 until March 22nd, 2020. And then March 23rd, 2020, that's like LWS 2.0. That's when we opened up our first Zoom Writers Hour for 9 people, less people than we sold tickets to at our first event.
Yeah. And we didn't, I'd never thought beyond London in a really sort of naive, very sort of limited worldview. I always thought, well, of course it's going to be in London, like it's based in London. And we joked about, well, maybe, we could set up one in New York, because I'd gone to New York or I'd gone to America for some like editorial training. But yeah, this was so much cooler. So what I love is that we can talk and speak and be friends with writers from all over. And it's so much more interesting because of that. But we hadn't expected that.
Did you just open it up with just the one when after the lockdown started? You just did one a day, and then it's kind of grown from there, or did you kind of set off with the different time zones?
It was really such a small experiment. It was Sunday night. We were caffing ourselves because the world looked like it was shutting down. My family had COVID. My entire family had COVID, and we had an event lined up for that week and weeks after, and we just thought, well, clearly it's going to have to change. And it's that everyone was on the cusp. All businesses were in the cusp of like trying to figure out whether to cancel things or not. And we was like, well, what do we say? We don't even know for sure. Will it be cancelled? Because Albright, we're running it at Albright, was still going. They were still saying that they were going to run events. And then Matt and I thought, well, what if you and I just write tomorrow morning, on Monday morning? Why don't we just write at 8 o'clock?
And then we sent an email that night at like 10 p.m. Sunday to our email list, basically everyone who had come to an event up until then, and said, we're starting this thing. We're calling it the Writers Hour. We're doing it for 10 days. Join us at 8 a.m. Monday to Friday for the next 2 weeks. And we'll see what happens. And we haven't stopped since. So, and I think we didn't have a grand plan. And I think that's the beauty about all of this, is there isn't like, we have a kind of a vision of where we could go. But, had we waited and tried to strategically plan every step of the way, it surely would not have happened. But because we've just been going, how can we serve the writing community? I think that was where it came from. Is Parul, you were like, what can we give to the group, the writers? What can we give to fellow writers? But then what's a way that we can get something out of it too? So it feels like we can write it together, but we'll open it up. And from that day, we just keep listening. And that's when 1 hour became 2 hours, became 3 hours, became 4 hours, became so many different things, Slack and everything else that we've opened up now.
Wow. So like that 2-week experiment became everything else. So did it just literally, was it word of mouth? Did it like quickly kind of pick up pace that first couple of weeks, and you just were so surprised and then you kind of carried on? Was it just like a natural wave to you guys?
Yeah, I'm trying to remember. I think it was
it took a while.
Word of mouth. Yeah,
with all these things, like even now we've noticed, like you sort of have to almost not care about the numbers. Like you track them and you follow them, but you can't. You just, who knows who's going to show up the next day. And so what I found is suddenly you'll have these spikes and you're like, what happened? Did someone who has a big following talk about this? Like, why have suddenly more people showed up? Like even this morning, it suddenly went to 340 and I was like, oh, like, that's a lot of people. Yeah. Where did that come from? It hasn't hit that sort of number before. So you sort of can't tell.
Yeah. And the other thing that we did was, so in the very first couple of days, someone said, oh, is there I got so much value out of this. Is there any way I can help support this? Do you have a Patreon or something? And we're like, no, but maybe we can create one. So then the next day we went to Patreon, created an account for us. And that was kind of what we used as a gauge, because we weren't sure how do we know whether to continue this thing? Is this thing valuable enough? And so I think we said, if we can, I think we then committed for a month. And at some point we said, okay, if we get like 15 patrons, we'll continue it through April. And then it was kind of month to month. We said, should we continue this through May? Keep in mind, like, we all thought COVID was maybe by the summer it'd be over last year, right? So we're like, okay, should we keep this going? Are people going to go back to work? So that's why we had to go month by month, because just to plan anything beyond that felt silly. But we used patrons as a gauge. Is this valuable enough? If we can, and we kind of made it like, if we can hit 20, if we can hit 30, then it's a signal to keep this thing going. So that's kind of been our signal. And now, I mean, I think we'd get stormed with pitchforks and torches if we were to stop it now, because it's such a cool space.
And what did you offer with that Patreon side then? Because I know it's a lot of extras, isn't it? And you've got a few different levels. How did you kind of work out what you were offering there?
Well, I guess so. Right now, the main thing at Silver, and that's kind of where things start to get interesting, is we have a Slack channel, a Slack group that we use to make it easy to connect. And where that came is we saw a lot of people trying to chat in the Zoom box here, and we realized that it's pretty horrendous to try to connect with anyone in this chat box. And then people were exchanging emails, and we said, well, why don't we just make it easy to connect? So that's when Slack came about, and we made it like a perk for people who really felt like they were engaged and wanted to be there. And then because we had transitioned our interviews online, we then thought, well, maybe we'll throw those in too. If you become a Silver, you get free access to all the interviews we run. And at the time, it was just every month. Now we're weekly. So it's we've definitely amped up what we do and how we do it.
Amazing. And you must have done so many great interviews then over the last year, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, it's been nice. It's been nice to just hear so many different perspectives. There've been writers who are publishing into this landscape of not being able to actually go to real events. And it's interesting to hear how they're navigating that, and then how they're keeping their writing discipline. And for us, it's a wonderful chance to actually, especially the published authors, it's like a wonderful chance to like force yourself to read their books, and like you get into a discipline of reading. And we just hear such great advice from a range of characters.
And you must be like coming up to a year. I suppose you must have actually been a really big part of quite a lot of people publishing things now. Like, you know, I know people can write anything from blog posts to their emails or whatever they want here in this space, but you must be now getting to a point where people are actually thanking you for helping them get through that novel, or, you know, you must be on that journey with them now. Have you had that feedback from people that you've really helped them break through?
Yeah. I mean, the first book was from the Socko book. I forget what it's called, Fast Fashion, but how to break up with fast fashion.
Yeah, Emma Matthews.
And that was actually, she only had a deadline of like 6 weeks or so. It was very short. So that book was published last year at some point,
end of last year. Yeah.
And that was our first Writers Hour book, you know, written during Writers Hour, and that was so cool. And it's still exciting. It's still, I mean, that weekly roundup we do every week, that's exactly why we do it, so we can see what everyone's been up to and help celebrate and push each other's work out. It's lovely. Like I go back to like COVID and Brené Brown, when all this hit, it was like, who do you turn to for advice? And all the sort of mentors that we have, you know, people you think of, who you admire, they talk about just staying productive, staying calm, staying kind, finding some point of stability. And just everyone writing together is a point of stability for all of us. Knowing that you're creating and putting your book out in the world, Claire, is wonderful. I know that that's happening. I don't know when lockdown's going to end, but I know that people are writing and producing.
I think that's the thing, isn't it? With like what you're doing is, it's like you're leading in a crisis, and like daring to lead and daring to stand up and say, okay, wouldn't it be great if we had, what if we do that? And that's the hard bit. Like, that's not the easy bit to show up more or less every day, especially now you've added Australia in, like you've pretty much
yeah.
I don't know. But yeah, it's like, it's quite a commitment, isn't it? And it's a brilliant commitment. But yeah, it's a great thing to do. It's a very brave thing to do, I think. And it's good that you've got each other as well, I think, because if it was on your own, it must be quite like such a hard, even just to manage, actually, just doing the hours. So I think it's great you've got like that great partnership there. It must be really important.
I've learned so much. I've learned so much from Matt, just working with him, and just the idea of making sure, it sounds cheesy, but like bringing joy, making sure you have joy in everything you do. And times when I've been a bit tired or down, I feel like he'll pick me up, and he'll like fill in if I need to stay out of the inbox for a while, or pull away from something.
Yeah, and ditto. I mean, that's, I think, the beauty of a partnership. And I'm always amazed and a little bit perplexed when anyone does something on their own, because I know how difficult it is. Because the days when you're feeling down, like Parul said, I mean, there's days when I'm feeling down, but she's there to kind of pick us up and pick me up, and having that, you're able to balance, because you can't always be on and always positive and optimistic about what you're doing. But hopefully one of you is, and that can make the difference. But yeah, and the thing about commitment too, Claire, is that it's funny, because I think both of us are historically terrible committers, and we the way that we've tricked ourselves is we've set small commitments that felt doable. So 10 days, okay, 1 month, 2 months, 1 month. So like we have to see it, and then we can commit to that. But yeah, at March 23rd, if you said, okay, for the next year, every Monday to Friday, you're going to do this thing, we'd be like, hell no, there's no way.
No way.
But we have, because of the many commitments. Yeah. And being there for each other and doing it with each other has certainly helped.
And is the plan, because I would presume you would try and continue after lockdown because it's so amazing, but is that not, are you not sure if you would or not? Or because I think it's become such a big, massive part of everyone's life now. I'm not sure what we'll do without you.
Yeah, it'd be a shame to stop it, but ultimately I think we want to keep doing what we've doing in that, to keep listening. And if this is something that people still value, then we're going to find a way to do it. But to not assume, and make sure it works for us and works for the community and works for everyone.
And you've just had a little rebrand as well, I saw, which looked great.
Emma's great. Yeah, Emma Wintersladen is such a wonderful artist, because she joined quite early on. She came to one of our pitch book masterclasses, and then I think I saw her Instagram feed, and we've been looking for someone to help us out. And then so we commissioned her to do a bit of a rebrand for us. And I do like it on my own. When I've tried to brand things, I've cared too much and tried to be a perfectionist about it. This time we didn't, this is wonderful and perfect now, but before that we were just making it up as we went along. That is not my forte, doing design work. So I'm glad that we took our time, because in a way we didn't need it to look as beautiful as it does now. I'm so glad it looks beautiful now. But it makes me realize again, like working with someone else helps me, because then I'm not as concerned about putting things out in the world in their imperfection.
Yeah, and this is, I mean, kind of leaning on my experience with Escape the City too, is people who want to start businesses or projects or make big changes. They can let the stuff like the logo be the thing that stops them from starting something. And we both of us were like, oh, this logo really isn't that pretty. It works. We grew to love it more, but it wasn't stopping us. Making the logo beautiful wasn't stopping us from creating a space for writers. And so just to remember that, and I'm glad it came at the time it did, and Emma's wonderful, and we love it.
Absolutely. I also found I was going through texts that Matt and I had exchanged way when we first started, and there's a text exchange about London Writers Salon. I don't know that that's a good name. We should change it. It doesn't matter for now. Let's just keep it there. We'll come up with something better. And it's like, that was back in 2018, I think. Just 2019.
I will say though, Parul, is that I had some pretty terrible ideas of what we should call it. And I'm so glad you convinced me to go. You convinced me against my ideas and to go with London Writers Salon. I was less tied to London, so I was like, well, actually, London's a cool name, but what if we go beyond? And I don't even want to bring up the name I suggested because
I remember exactly where we were having that discussion, because Matt and I knew each other, but how well do you know someone when you can say, I'm not sure. I'm not totally sure about that. And I remember standing in the train station having a discussion, thinking, like, it's a bit like when you have your first, like, not tiff, but like disagreement with a friend or a partner, and you're like, are we going to survive this? Is this going to be okay? Can I say what I think? How far can I go? But then I did something wonderful. Remember when we set up America's first hour, I put a massive American flag all over it. Matt was like, no.
Which in theory isn't bad, but I'm like, it kind of signals, I'm like, this looks a little too MAGA right now.
I think you said, what if this was a British flag? And I was like, oh, I get it. Whereas in my head, I was like, I'm proud. American flag looks beautiful. Let's plaster it all over the Writers' Tower. Glad we didn't do that.
A little more subtle.
So how do you deal with like disagreements then? Are you just like really honest with each other and quite calm about it all then?
Yeah, we don't. I think I feel like we mostly are on the same page, and I'm very, very, very open to being wrong, and that helps. And you are very, very open to being wrong.
Yeah,
and
I think that's the key.
Yeah. I often assume that I'll say something and it may be wrong, but I'll say it anyway, just in case. Like, maybe this is the way, but maybe it's not. I don't know. And I don't mind backing off if I think, well, yeah, but maybe that's fine too. Maybe I'll just totally do a 360 on what I thought.
I think what also helps is we're on the same page in that what we're trying to create. So we're on the same team. So if we disagree, it's because we have a different opinion on how we get there, but we're also open to being proven wrong. And we have tried to, I think I've tried to get better at like letting go of my ideas more and trusting the experiment more than my opinion.
Yes,
so let's try this. I believe one thing, you believe one thing. Well, let's just see what happens because we really don't know.
Yeah.
But I think, I think it helps to trust. There's a lot of trust between us, and we have good intentions.
Sometimes when things are moving fast as well, and they are going right, and it's growing and it's doing well, you have less time to sort of agonize about things as well. So like you said, the experiment thing, you become a lot less precious about things because you're like, we'll be over that idea by Friday, because you do just end up moving at speed a bit more, don't you? I think.
Totally. I mean, we are the London Writers Salon, and we'll put out posts that have typos all over them. What are we going to do? Like, sometimes it happens, and we can change it. We can edit it.
Yeah, and that's and actually, I think Cecilia, she's in the room. You mentioned Cecilia said to always put a typo in everything you do to give writers, especially like us, something to keep us busy.
That's brilliant. I love that. Maybe a bit of grammar from grammar.
Yeah. So you can trust any typo. It's Easter eggs for you all to find.
I love that. That gets you out of all kinds of problems.
Yeah.
So actually, onto like social media and your newsletters, you seem to have quite a slick operation there. I mean, I love an automated like newsletter. You always like everything's always bang on the money. You've always got posts going out. How do you deal with that side? Because I know from personal experience, it's a lot of admin, isn't it? And a lot of creativity. And how do you kind of balance all of that with everything else you've got to do?
I think we're still figuring that out. But well, we take different things. So I take the emails, most of the emails, like the newsletters and Writers Hour emails. Parul takes most of the social stuff. So that's one way. And I think it's our strengths
we input
too.
On each other. Yeah, so we input, so Matt will say, oh, hey, have you thought about this as an idea? Or I might go into the emails sometimes and respond or check out. But it definitely helps dividing it up so you know what you're in charge of. But also I think we really care, because before all of this, before the salon, And I was trying to set up I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. I knew I wanted to do something with editorial and business, like somehow marry it up. And I was taking all these courses on like how to get a X number of followers and all that stuff. And I realized how soulless all of that was, because they talked a lot about, like commenting on people's posts and all this sort of stuff. Like follow hashtags you could do, and this types of content you should put up. And actually with the salon, I ignored all of that advice, and just apart from the only thing I did do was I knew the types of posts we wanted. So there'd always be something about Writers Hour, or there'd always be a post. Now there's always a Writer's View post, but none of it has been done with anything other than the thought of what do people in the room want to see, like people that I really care for. Like, oh, you might want to see each other's computer desk space. You might want to meet each other. And I don't ever try and comment or like things for the sake of it. It's purely done by heart, and I think that's what makes a difference.
Is Instagram like the channel you find the most useful, or is it a different channel for you guys? How are you finding people? How are they sharing things with you? Is it mainly on there or somewhere else?
So I mean, I prefer Instagram, so that's why I put most of my attention on Instagram. I don't particularly like Twitter, but that's because I see a lot of negative sentiment on there, particularly in the publishing world. If you're part of the publishing world, it's very siloed, and all my friends in publishing, honestly, there's certain things you can and cannot say, and you get shot down very easily. And they all, at least my subjective experience of it is that, they really care too much about the wrong things. And so I'm not a big fan of Twitter for that reason. Whereas Instagram, it feels more about the image, and it feels like a sweeter, calmer community. And so as a result, because I think we put more out on Instagram, most of our interaction comes on there. And so, yeah, we get DMs all the time, and people share things with us. And I love it. I love it when people send photos of their morning and their afternoon. It makes us, and then I try and repost that purely because I want us to meet each other that way.
Yeah, and I think that's an ethos and that we try to keep with everything we do, is we want to make you all, the writers, the heroes of these stories. And whether it's the newsletter shouting out what you publish, it's a lot easier. I find it a lot easier to shout about things on social media when you're not shouting about yourself, but you're shouting about other people.
Yes.
And so maybe that's a trick too, is like, we're just trying to create a platform and raise everyone up in this group. And it's so much easier to give and share it with that mentality.
And is it do you kind of because whenever I come to this Writers Hour, I'm always like, I feel like you're really in control. You're all ready. I've had my email. I know what's going on. Does it feel really in control from your side as well? Do you schedule things far in advance, like the social and newsletters? And so you're like really, because when you come to that 8 a.m. thing, you must feel like you're really organized if you do that. Is it quite easy to organize, or do you feel like, is it quite hard to do it?
It's definitely gotten easier. And the other thing, and we're so fortunate that one writer in our community, Alicia, has stepped up and has been helping us in particular with the email side of stuff. So thank you, Alicia. So she's helped us streamline some of those things. She's helped us become more efficient with it. She's helped have some of the heavy lifting with it. But it's definitely more of a slick operation than it was in the early days. So now I think about 6 months ago, we transitioned, maybe not even all of our emails, to MailChimp. Before, there was a manual email going out. You register on Zoom, and then I think I was sending a manual email, downloading everyone's emails, saying, "Hey, come to here. Writers Hour is about to start. Here's the quote." And eventually it's like that needs to change. So since we moved to MailChimp and Alicia's helped us streamline it, it's been a huge load off.
So an example is when we first started, the words of wisdom, the thing that we share in the beginning, that was just because life was very hard, right? And I had Ryan Holiday in front of me, and there were always, Matt and I both admire lots of writers and like quotes, so we used to just read them out. But we were doing every single one. So I had enough for months. I didn't even know it. I was literally just going through every book, and I'd pick one probably the night before or that morning. It wasn't
sometimes that morning. Yeah, we'd come like 2 minutes. Like, do you have a quote?
I I might have one.
I'd go go to the bookshelf and grab one. Okay, I got one. Let's read this.
Yeah. And then I think it was Anne Dittmeyer, who's a blogger based in Paris, and she's hosted as well for us. And she said, maybe you should open it up to other people. And at first I was like, really? Oh, actually, then I was like, actually, that's a really good idea. And then Alicia stepped up at one point and said, she just asked if she could help. And then she ended up saying, well, why don't we have a system? Like she basically created, so we have a form, and Matt and I do Monday or Friday to top and tail the week, because there's a certain philosophy, I suppose, of like stoic positivity that we want in the salon. But it's wonderful hearing everyone else's selections. Like I love it. I love it so much to hear how different our sources of inspiration are. But it's scheduled into a spreadsheet so that we know when we log on who it is, and we're always ready to take it on if the person hasn't showed up, or if for whatever reason they can't be there. So there's a whole system there, but it took a while. It took us probably like 5-6 months to figure out that we needed a system, because it became really tiring after a while to find, especially if you do, once they started, after like 6 months or so, you can't come up with every single quote for every single day.
Yeah, it's quite nice to hear that journey, actually, because when you're a small business, you are doing everything yourself, aren't you? You are doing it at the time, and then eventually, like, you have grown to a size where, and also doing so many a day, like it's impossible to keep up, isn't it? So I think it's good to know that you bring those systems in, and then it takes that, like, the edge off, doesn't it? Because you can focus on doing the actual work rather than like trying to look for a book every time you're doing one. So it's really good to hear that. Yeah, here you get to that point where it's like it does help, like having MailChimp and having spreadsheets, even though they're annoying, but yeah, we need them, don't we?
Definitely. I remember manually typing in the quote afterwards. So you know how we go on silent mode, and then I was like scrabbling. I'd have the book like propped up and trying to like type it up.
That's right.
Whereas now it's easy. It's like cut and paste, put it in.
God, yeah. You realize how many things we were doing manually, and we still are. But the things that we're not, and this is a constant conversation we have, is what's value add for us to do and what's not. And some of those things, while important to get the thing going and figuring out what the system is, at some point we have to let them go so we can focus on, building the community space, building, whatever, reaching out to authors and doing other things that are more value added with our time.
It's like something like open mic started. I started open mic because I just thought it'd be fun to share and speak, and to hang out with the writers in the group and share work. But there came a point where it was too much, and I tried to close it down. So I just put a message out and was like, I think we have to close it down. I can't remember the wording I used, and immediately was like, no, I'll take over. And so Monica and KK and Rachel took over open mic, and now they run open mic for us, and that's fantastic.
That is amazing. It's like such a nice community, isn't it? Actually, it sounds very supportive, I think.
Yeah, we have
incredible.
We've met some phenomenal writers in here. Like I love meeting new people. I get my energy from meeting new people, and I've loved that I've been able to meet so many new people. And they've become friends, right? I've talked to many writers here more than I've talked to friends from life before Writers Hour and COVID.
Do you have like a particular like highlight, like somebody who you maybe interviewed, or even a highlight from your career that you look back on and think, wow, that was amazing?
So many. It's like every new week brings a new highlight.
Yeah, one of the things, what stands out to me is when we have the writers, I mean, there's different levels in which we're happy. Like, it's wonderful when we hit certain new like numbers, and when we get emails through nominating us for things, or it's still very early days, but that's wonderful. But actually, it's when in the Writers Hour, after when we speak to people, and then we've had instances where we've spoken to someone and you realize that they would never have normally come to something like this, or maybe they have trouble in their own life, or maybe they have some sort of physical illness, and those are the times when you feel touched in a way that nothing else compares. Because in the end, why do you do this? Like, why do you do anything in life? And I think you do it to make a difference, even if it's in its little way, even if it's just for these little hours here and there. And so those are the moments that where Matt and I probably cry. Those are the ones I remember the most.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's been the big surprise, is how much this space, while we thought it'd be for productivity, has actually been for mental health, helping loneliness, community connection. So those are the big surprises, and the things that do touch our heart the most. And yeah, we did an end of year party for our patrons, and a bunch of people came together and made this video for us.
Oh, wow.
And it was like a bunch of people saying like how much the space meant to them, and it was really, I mean, that was a tearjerker. So
yeah,
that moments like that, it's kind of like, it smacks us in the face and just says something is different here. We're creating something a little different than we thought, but in the best possible way. So yeah, those are touching. And then, I mean, I think the other moments that I love are sometimes there's some pretty amazing people who come into this room. I mean, you're all amazing, but like, Elizabeth Luart, she shows up like every day, and she's like an icon, a food writer. And we've had actors and actresses and people who I like look them up later, and it's like, oh wow, you're a BAFTA nominated actress, you're a TED speaker, so it's like, you never know who you're going to be next to in this room rubbing elbows with. And it doesn't matter, because we're all here. I like to think of this it's not the beauty contest or the muscle contest, it's the gym. This is where we come, you get your workout. Doesn't matter if you're new to writing or you're a published author or whoever you are. You just come and you do the work. And but occasionally there's someone cool next to you that you would never meet in other circumstances.
I love that. And I love how you like ask people what they've been working on like at the end. So like a few people do. I mean, it's so nice, isn't it? Because I mean, I'm sometimes out in my dressing gown, and you always ask me when I've got no makeup on every time. But it doesn't, like you said, it doesn't matter, does it? It's quite that thing where I think when you see writers, like you put them on a pedestal and you think like they just a novel just appears, doesn't it? Like you just presume that, then to know that everybody's in the same boat, no matter how amazing they are, they still need that like quiet time to try and write, and the barriers are still the same, no matter whether you're writing something small or big, or you're a huge author or you're starting out. It's kind of quite a leveler, isn't it? We're all in the same hypothetical boat. Yeah,
and I think that is what we try to be, and what we want to do is create that space, to take everything down a level, and let's just talk real talk here.
Yeah. And we find that in the community as well. Sorry, Claire.
No, go on. Sorry.
I was just going to say, the one thing I've noticed in this community is I feel that when people come into this room, they put their facade, their arms. You lay your arms down and you come as you are. Whereas in life, when you dress up, maybe there's something about the act of going outside the house and meeting people. There's always a little bit of pretense, and I've noticed it a lot less here. So it feels like there's really not much small chit chat. It's real. This is what you care about. Yeah, I love that. That makes me so much happier than small talk.
It is brilliant, a brilliant space that you've created for people. And do you guys both do things outside of London Writers Salon, or is it like, are you full time with that now, or do you have like other projects you work on?
For me, more and more, this is full time, and thanks to our patrons, it's able to be. Before this, I was making my living mostly as a facilitator, doing trainings and courses and stuff like that. And I just stopped looking for work as this started to pick up.
Yeah, and I still, I mean, I've been a freelance editor for a very long time, and I do work with the Story Grid. We're a fantastic organization. They have like a university and a publishing house, and I still do editorial work. I definitely take on less. I don't have as much capacity to do editorial work, but for me, giving that up is impossible, because I love editing. But what's nice is it fits in very nicely to this. So both Matt and I also offer mentoring and coaching. And we have a few select folk that we know that we've worked with who we offer out as coaches as well, including a few agents and editors. So the editorial side fits in very nicely with the salon.
That is brilliant, because I think if you are like really or probably serious about writing, then you guys are going to know it all, aren't you? And it's probably a great place to do your training, like you said, go into the gym, and then you've got your personal trainers there if you need them. It's
Exactly.
It is brilliant. It's such a great organization. So so I've got a few more questions, and then we're done. So who in the industry inspires you then? Give me some names.
In the industry.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it's interesting what industry are we in? That's what sometimes we're not even sure. It's like a cross. I mean, I think Matt and I admire very similar people, full stop. We seem to read similar books. What the Story Grid are doing, what Tim Grohl and Sean Coyne are doing over at the Story Grid is incredible. So Sean Coyne is an ex editor, Random House editor. He was a publisher when he left. He's also been an agent, and the Story Grid is like a methodology. It's a bit like the hero's journey, Save the Cat, that sort of methodology. But they've created like an education system, like you can learn about storytelling and how to tell good stories. And they've just created a publishing house, which is really interesting. It's a different royalty split. So it's 40% to the writer, 10% to the editor, and 50% to the publishing house. And the books are distributed via subscription service, which I find fascinating. So I love what they're doing. And Tim is sort of on a very low-key basis our mentor. He's someone we've interviewed and someone I'm trying to learn from. So I like that they're disrupting the space.
Yeah, I'd agree with what Parul said. The other thing, I mean, I like Ryan Holiday. I don't know if he's considered industry or not, but the way that I think we admire people who are both care about the craft, but are entrepreneurial and have like a startup mindset. So like Sean and Tim with Story Grid, Ryan Holiday with the different things he does with his podcasts and newsletters and publishing and marketing and those things. Those are the things that inspire us. But then also there's the softer Mary Oliver, just a poetic sensibility. But I don't know if she'd be considered the industry, but we do like to make sure there's the heart in it. It's not just the business.
Yeah. There's also there are some interesting organizations that have nothing to do with writing that certainly inspired me as we started. So I'm a member of F45, which is this Australian HIT training that you do. It's all over the world, like originated from Australia. And when lockdown hit, they started offering on Instagram free workouts. So just every single day live stream. And I was looking at what they were doing. And I remember being so taken aback, like, wow, this is incredible that you're offering this service. And that, influenced some of what we did. Like I was watching them. So these sort of institutions, like CrossFit and F45 that have a sort of community that's almost a bit like a cult. They're a bit, people buy into the system in a beautiful way. Cult can be negative, cult can be positive. It's like a family. And those folk definitely inspire me.
I think that's true. Yeah, we try to look outside of the industry, actually. We sometimes describe ourselves like maybe we could be Peloton for writers. Maybe we could be F45 for writers. So we're trying to take inspiration outside of the industry and give the industry something that doesn't exist potentially.
I think that's very wise, because you must have seen an awful lot of changes in the industry you're working in over the last few years. And what do you think kind of the future is going to hold then for the industry? What do you think is that kind of example you're giving Parul about? Is that going to be more the future, where it's going to be a different split for writers and it's going to be subscriptions? Do you think we're going to kind of see this evolution keep moving?
I don't know. It's a short answer. From what I see, places like the Story Grid and what they're offering is still considered very much on the periphery. They're like on the bleeding edge of revolution in the publishing industry. From my understanding of the publishing industry, and my friends who are still in it, because I am definitely outside of it now, it still seems very much of the same. I don't know that there's been any seismic change. Amazon has been the big seismic change, and they're normally put down as the awful beast that has damaged publishing. Whereas in actual fact, they were the innovators who actually decided to distribute books online when other people would not do it. So I feel like change is slow, but it's these independent companies like the StoryGrid that are doing really cool things.
Actually quite exciting to think of, yeah, to see what the future is going to bring, I think, isn't it? Like, you know, lots of people obviously been able to self-publish, you know, even if it's just in a blog format over like last, you know, well, however long the internet's been going, and now, you know, it's moving into more and more people doing podcasting and videos, you know, increasing and increasing. So I think it'll be interesting to see what the future holds for us with all this modern media knocking around.
Yeah, and it's one of the reasons we tried to, I mean, a lot of people we interview are authors, traditionally published authors of books, but we do try to interview self-published people, spoken word, people using Substack, Medium, because we see that as the industry is the whole thing of the future. So.
Right.
Amazing. And okay, 2 final questions, then we don't. Do you have a motto or a mantra that you live by?
There's some things we say a lot to each other
About
like, let's have fun with this before every masterclass in anything we do, just in that Zoom room, just as because often there's like a little bit of like, oh, have we got this right? Or, you know, maybe we're interviewing someone and their tech isn't working out, so it feels stressful. And one of us, normally Matt, will say, let's remember to have fun. Let's remember to enjoy this.
Otherwise, what's the point, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's a good one. I think for us, the phrase that kind of has come in our heads since we transitioned online is serve and listen. And so we see this as very much an active service to the writing community, and to just keep listening. What would you all find most useful? What can we do better? What can we do different? Gotcha. And then just serve, build, listen, keep and repeat. So that's, yeah.
I love that.
Yeah. And finally, where would you like to be in 10 years' time? Which is a bit of a ridiculous, now I'm saying it out loud, because we've just been through a global pandemic and maybe we're not even done, who knows? But any kind of, grand plans that you'd like to tick off?
I'd like to be able to go outside in 10 years' time into...
I'm going to take that one off in future.
It's so hard. I'm bad at those big questions. I think for me, I think, will this exist in 10 years' time? Who knows? I hope for us, if it does, then we're continuing to serve the writing community in the same way that we are, but hopefully we've become bigger, better, and if that makes sense to be bigger and better, maybe it doesn't. I think I always want to be doing work that I care about with people I like. And if
that's it. I'd say I'll ditto that. Doing work that you love with people that you like being around is. I mean, I feel like what more could you ask from life?
Oh, well, that's a perfect place to end it, I think, on that lovely note. I think that's all of my amazing questions. Unless anyone else has got any they want to pop in the chat box, but I think we've covered a lot, actually.
We did.
Thanks, Claire.
Thank you. This
was fun. This was a little innovation too. We might have to do more of these after hours interviews.